The ocean is not just a body of water, it is a vault. It is a cathedral of pressure and silence that swallows noise, light, metal, memory, and sometimes entire lives, without leaving even a ripple to explain itself. Stand at the shoreline for a moment and you can feel it, that low, endless breath, the roll and pull, the promise and the threat. 1 second everything is ordinary, steel hull cutting clean through a sunlit swell, passengers on deck with coffee and small talk, and the next second the horizon hardens, the sky tilts, the ship shudders, and history gains a new question mark. Tonight, you and I are stepping into that question mark. 5 true mystery. 5 investigations that begin on the surface and then plunge into the part of the world where clocks don't matter and radio has no audience. One of these stories ends with a ship returning by itself, its tables set and its lights still ready for evening, but without a single human soul aboard. Another was run like a military operation, an expedition with steam power, iron reinforcement, and years of rations, and still, it ended with bones on ice and doubts that refused to die. Another may never have existed at all, and yet it keeps reappearing like a bad dream sailors still whisper about over their charts. And one happened not on the sea but in the sky above it, leaving 239 living, breathing people on the wrong side of a vanished line. Breathe in. Listen, the ocean is speaking in absences. Begin where the Indian Ocean reaches up to South Africa and take something without giving it back. The ship was called the Waratah, SS Waratah, nicknamed the Titanic of the South, a passenger cargo steamer that was supposed to be a floating advertisement for confidence. It had electric light, a double deck, and the kind of comfortable appointments that make travelers forget the distance they are crossing. In July 1909, Waratah left Durban, bound for Cape Town, with 211 people aboard, merchants with ledgers of plans, women with carefully packed trunks and folded hopes, children whose worlds had not yet come apart. But even before that final departure, rumor had begun to ride the rails of the ship. Not a single rumor, exactly, more like a sensation, a subtle wrongness that made knees seek handrails and eyes measure the angle of horizon to deck. She leaned. In rougher water, she leaned strange. The balance was not quite right. Some passengers wrote it down in the log and in letters, some decided enough was enough and stepped off in Durban while they still could. And still, the Waratah sailed. Picture the last ordinary minutes for those who stayed. A midday glare that polishes the ocean into hammered steel. A family gathering in the saloon for lunch. A steward bending to fix a carpet runner. Quiet sea turning just a touch less quiet, just enough to draw a line under the day. Then the part storytellers wish they could fill and historians resent because it will not be filled. The gap. No SOS. No radio call. No flare on the dark water. No lifeboat washed ashore with a name painted on its bow. Search ships fanned out, then search planes drew strict grids across the sky, then governments wrote budgets for more days and more fuel and a little more hope. And what did the ocean return? Nothing. Not a crate. Not a boot. Not a scrap of carved wood with a letter of its name. Theories came later, as they always do. A storm with a twist like a wrench. A high, top-heavy load that made a dangerous ship just a little more dangerous. A magnetic anomaly that sent compass needles mad. People reach for explanations because silence is heavier than iron. But the Waratah's legacy is its absence. There was once a beautiful, overconfident machine moving between 2 South African cities, and now there is only a blank in the ledger where an arrival should have been. If the Waratah is the ocean's locked door, then the Joyita is the door left ajar. In 1955, a small wooden vessel named MV Joyita left Apia, Samoa, on a routine run toward the Tokelau Islands. 69 feet long, modest, reliable, familiar to the islands, it carried 25 people, 16 crew, 9 passengers. The weather report was kind, the path was short, the duty was simple. Somewhere along that path, the signal died. No distress call got through. No Mayday. No coordinates, no last words to triangulate. For 5 weeks the ocean kept its mouth shut. Then, on November 10th, she reappeared, adrift, far off her course, listing, but still afloat like a stubborn cork refusing to sink. Come aboard with the first men who climbed her rail. The windows are cracked. The radio has been smashed into silence as if by a deliberate hand. Yet the light switches, why are they on? Why is the galley still in motion? Pots sitting where a cook's hands put them down. Why is a medical bag open on a bench with bandages stained a deep, dark color that dries to brown? The engine room tells one truth, a problem with fuel, a rupture that could have forced decisions, but the rest of the ship tells another, choices made in a hurry, but not in chaos. The log has no last dramatic line. The 3 life rafts are gone, life jackets gone with them, as if a captain ordered an evacuation and everyone obeyed. But where are the people? The Joyita is almost famously buoyant, built so stubbornly full of compartments and cork that she's hard to drown. Sailors know it. Engineers know it. So why abandon her unless something else, something imminent, forced it? Pirates working a quiet stretch of Pacific. A radio problem that left a wound and a panic. A badly injured leader whose pain bent the crew's minds toward the simplest plan: get off, get to shore, get help. Every explanation leaves a fingerprint and then smears it. The ship returned. The story did not. Now, rewind the calendar past both of those events to 1845 and cross from the Pacific mystery to an Arctic obsession. Britain wanted a road through the ice, a northwest passage that would lace Europe to Asia and drop months off the world's most profitable journey. For that, the Royal Navy sent 2 ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, strong wooden hulls overlaid with iron, engines added for pushing through crush and silence, and stores that promised survival for years. There were 129 men aboard when they sailed, led by Sir John Franklin. Their confidence wasn't a mood, it was a machine built out of coal, copper, sailcloth, maps, and the collective certainty of an empire that could redraw coastlines and call it progress. Then came the ice, and with the ice came the long season where the sun does not climb and even sound is slow. The first search parties expected to find men and fire. Later search parties lowered their expectations: a note in a cairn, a belt buckle on pebbled shore. What they found instead took longer. Canvas scrap here, a skeleton there under a pile of stones. Evidence of camps where hunger is not a metaphor but a measurement. How many days since the last real meal? How many miles to a place that might not be frozen? On some of the bones were cut marks, scored in a way that does not look like the bite of a wolf or the tear of a bear. They looked like human work. There were inert witnesses too, voices from the people who had always lived with that ice, telling of white men stumbling, starving, desperate along the floes, telling of a ship crushed and another caught irregularly in a vice, first upright, then angled toward surrender. More than a century passed with the story scattered like cold coins across tundra and water, passed in fragments from campfire to footnote, from rumor to forensic report. Then, as if the ice decided to return what it had borrowed, the ships were found, Erebus in 2014 and Terror in 2016, resting like sleeping animals underwater. Inside were mugs and plates, books and tools, the quiet museum of a life halted mid-step. Much was learned, the last mystery refused to move. Did lead from tinned food and pipes make men slow and ill? Was it scurvy, frozen lungs, the heart's exhaustion, or madness bred by winter upon winter? The Arctic keeps unsatisfactory answers the way it keeps light in summer: too much and not enough. You may feel your lungs thaw as we sail south again, back to warm water and a story that lives on the lip between report and legend. The name most often used is the Ourang Medan, a Dutch-sounding phrase that translates to Man of Medan. The time, late 1940s. The place, somewhere in the Strait of Malacca, a congested, complicated maritime throat where merchant ships thread through islands and currents and sometimes through rumors that outlive. The message, according to the tale, was unambiguous and feels like a living hand squeezing your wrist from another room. All officers including the captain are dead, possibly the entire crew dead. Then, a coda, I die. A nearby American ship, the Silver Star, went to help, homed in on the signal, and found a vessel adrift. What the boarding party saw stayed with them. Bodies on deck and in passageways, faces turned to the sky with mouths open, eyes wide in a last, frozen astonishment, as if something every nerve understood in an instant had come to claim them all. The rescuers tried to tow the ship. Fire broke out. The Ourang Medan sank. Now tilt your head and examine the story's scaffold. Where are the logs that normally survive tales like this? Where is the registry, the official record of a ship built, launched, insured, and sent on her way? Where are the newspaper clippings other than those that repeat the same sparse skeleton of fact? Many researchers think the Ourang Medan may be a ghost story in the literal sense, a myth mariners told each other, perhaps a mosaic of real tragedies reassembled into one cautionary narrative about the sea's capacity to turn an ordinary day into a scene no one can unsee. Others, wanting the tale to be true, guess at cargoes you would never list openly, poison gas, volatile chemicals that, if leaked, could suffocate a crew without leaving obvious marks. Either way, the lesson is stable even when the facts are not. There are corridors in maritime history that have no lamps, and in those corridors legends keep time until evidence either catches up or loses interest. And now to the flight that lifted off into a blue morning and kept going into the realm where radar screens and human patience both run out. March 8, 2014. A Boeing 777, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, departs Kuala Lumpur for Beijing with 239 people aboard. You can imagine the inside of the plane because you have sat on planes like it, the phosphorescent path lights along the carpet edges, the rectangular windows offering the same small, persuading view, the meal service that turns a row of strangers into an island that smells of coffee and stir-fry sauce. 38 minutes into the flight, the ordinary ends. The transponder stops speaking. A turn is made that is not on the flight plan. No cockpit distress call goes out to say, we are in trouble. The machine that is supposed to translate emergency into coordinates falls silent. What came next is a kind of modern epic, governments asking satellites and abyssal robots to find a needle in an ocean-sized universe. The search area expanded, contracted, shifted along arcs drawn from the way radio signals bounce off a moving target. Oceanographers described how currents carry debris and how shorelines collect. The world learned about handshakes between plane and satellite, about fuel ranges and autopilot behavior, about the difference between what we can guess and what we can prove. Months later, parts of a wing and pieces of interior architecture washed up on the western edge of the Indian Ocean. Enough to say, yes, this aircraft broke, and these are its fragments. Not enough to tell a final story. Why did the plane turn? Who was at the controls when it crossed into a quadrant no one had planned for? Was it a deliberate act, a hijack, a sudden emergency that multiplied into a catastrophe with no one left able to speak? The flight data recorder, the black box that digests every second, never came home. The search pressed on, paused, began again with new tools and new contracts and renewed hope, and then paused once more, the way a tide pulls away before it returns. For families, time split permanently into before and after, and even years later. The word closure feels like a trick of language meant to comfort people who refuse to be comforted. Now, step back from the 5 separate puzzles and notice what they make when you place them side by side. They form a map of our limits. In each case, a technology we trusted met a domain we do not entirely understand, and the result was not just a loss but a story-shaped space where answers should be. The Waratah illustrates how a single missing piece of physical evidence, one plank, one buoy, can magnify an ease into legend. The Joyita shows that sometimes we do get the artifact back, and even then we learn very little about the people who owned it. Erebus and Terror remind us that preparation and courage are sometimes entertainment for the environment rather than defense against it, and that centuries of searching may still leave one room in the house dark. The Ourang Medan demonstrates that the sea makes room for myth the way it makes room for fog, and that we are a species wired to create meaning when we can't retrieve facts. MH370 shows that even in an age of satellites and real-time tracking, there are still corners of the map where the line between certainty and conjecture is not a line at all, just a blur. Think about the way each mystery tempts us toward an answer that suits our fears. If you worry about storms, you will hear the Waratah's story and picture a wave like a moving wall. If you dislike human error, you will focus on loading charts, ballast calculations, and a captain's judgment. If you fear violence, the Joyita's missing people will look to you like victims of pirates who closed fast with a low wake and a quiet outboard. If you distrust institutions, you will believe a government knows more than it is saying about MH370. If you lean toward the macabre, you will see bones with cut marks and draw a straight line to cannibalism, missing all the black and white variables of survival, culture, and the way the frozen world suspends assumptions you swore you would never question. The ocean is not responsible for our biases, it just reflects them, the way it reflects stars that are too far away to help a sailor who has lost his compass. There is another way to listen to these stories, as testimonies about how humans behave at the edge of control. Ships lean and we pretend it's fine until too many bodies agree with the tilt. Radios crackle and go silent, and we learn in that instant whether a crew will drop anchor in panic or work the problem until the last possible second. Men prepared to endure 2 winters discover that the 3rd winter does not negotiate, that pride cannot be eaten, and that even the bravest body turns into a bargaining chip when the wind has hollowed your bone. A myth about a ghost ship may be the way a fleet copes with grief it cannot assign to one captain or one mistake. An airliner going silent invites us to measure the distance between data and certainty and then to sit with the fact that the distance does not care about our deadline. And yet the ocean does not only erase, it also preserves with an almost tender exactness. 2 wooden ships wearing iron found a home beneath the Arctic water that kept their journals, their plates, their sleeping quarters. When divers entered those cabins, they stepped into bedrooms where time had not been allowed to ransack the drawers. The Joyita drifted for weeks and still welcomed people aboard as if she had been waiting to be found. Families of MH370's passengers, after all these years, still anchor their days to a hope that is not naive but human, that some new equation, some new sonar tone, some new pattern in a drift model will take a search ship to the exact spot where the ocean, at last, will return what it borrowed. You can tell that these are not just stories about machine. They are about all the grand bargains we make with nature and with ourselves. We build hulls, and we ask the sea to respect geometry. We pack lifeboats, radios, tinned food, and we demand that chance behave. We draw straight lines over curved water and fly compressed schedules through a sky with mood. And every so often, the world declines our term. It doesn't always punish, sometimes it just fails to explain. For the families on those passenger manifests and crew lists, for the descendants of men who marched over ice with empty hands, for the harbor cities that lost taxes and tea and timber to a wave, the lack of explanation is its own kind of weather, a slow, cold storm that never entirely cleared. One last thing before we part company with the abyss. If you listen carefully, these 5 mysteries are not simply warning signs, they are also invitation. Not invitations to flirt with danger, but to cultivate humility, to respect a forecast even when the sky looks innocent, to run drills as if they are the real thing, to design with the worst day in mind, not the best, to keep a hand on the rail and 2 eyes on the horizon when others are scrolling or sleeping, to seek truth, but to know the boundary between what can be known and what must be endured. Somewhere off South Africa, a ship called the Waratah is either in pieces the currents have hidden or intact in a trench we have not yet scanned. Either way, 211 names are attached to it. Somewhere in archives and memories, a manifest may or may not exist for the Ourang Medan. Either way, the story carries a lesson about vigilance and the cost of secrecy. Somewhere in cold water lie 2 Royal Navy ships that still look, in the right light, as if their crews might simply be above on deck. Either way, the findings remind us that courage does not promise survival, only meaning. Somewhere under hundreds of miles of ocean are the last answers for a flight that reset clock faces on every kitchen wall that used to frame a homecoming, and until those answers are found, love will do what it always does, refuse to leave. If you felt the pull of these absences, you are not alone. We are a species that stares at a horizon. We put our best ideas into hulls and wings and call it progress. Most days, it is. Some days, the horizon stares back. Tonight we honored the days when it did, and the people who vanished into that stare. If any of this held your breath a little longer than usual, carry that breath with you. Respect the water. Respect the sky. And remember that beneath the beauty there is a silence older than maps, older than engines, older than us. The ocean will keep its secrets until it doesn't. And when it speaks, it will not apologize for how long it made us wait.